much action happening in the last series, it's hard to believe we have another one, but so we do, as Tempo Storm and LFM go head-to-head right now. J-How, are you ready?
I'm ready. The Revenge of Fury starts now. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, it's been a tough go of it right now for LFM, but you know, they've had obvious signs to where they show a team that is very much a work in progress, but they are going against one of North America's longest standing top teams in Tempo Storm. It might be rough, but I think that they have the skill potential to at least make this competitive.
I agree. When you look at their series versus Heroes Hearth, 2 of those games were very competitive. Towers of Doom went 4-4 in core health before Heroes Hearth were able to eke out a victory, but it was very close. However, that was not the same when you talk about Endemic. And I think that's something to keep in mind now is which LFM do we see? Were they just surprised by Endemic? Did they feel more pressure because that theoretically would be the series that they should win? It's hard to tell, but we'll see what LFM we get. We're going to check in with the standings of North America first. Tempo Storm sitting at the top, along with Heroes Hearth Esports. We don't get to see those 2 Titans clash head-to-head until next week. Until then, both of them will just be looking to get wins to keep up so that they can take the lead, whoever wins that series.
That is going to be an interesting one when we get there. And for LFM, you know, I mean, you've got to look at long term. Just getting top 6, I mean, if you are a team in the works, then getting top 6 by the time BlizzCon comes around means that you've qualified. I mean, if they make a run right now and just finish out their next 4, it'd be a little bit surprising, but that could give you a run towards Western Clash. But for this team, thinking long term, getting into those top 6 spots has to be there. And you get that through experience. You get that, you're going to have growing pains. You're bringing in somebody brand new in Droplets. You've got Fury coming over, different leadership on that front line. And it's actually a very positive thing. You look at some of the plays that they've made, there are definite positive signs. It's just a matter of reaching that potential. And sometimes that's a lot easier said than done.
Well, we are going to hear from the players about this match as they talk about each other. We're going to hear from Swabs and June about this next one.
I think a lot of people kind of underestimate LFM, maybe because they haven't won the series yet. But me personally, I think they're pretty good group of people. They actually won first game against Arctalysis, who's probably a top 3 team right now, and also their series versus Heroes Hearth, they actually could have won a couple of those games. So I think we're just gonna focus on our own game style, especially since we have been kind of interested in versing one of the very first teammate, which is Fury. We've been teamed together for a very, very long time, and I'm looking forward to playing versus Fury again and body him.
Even despite the Psalm leaving Tempo Storm, I still think they're one of the top teams. Definitely don't think it's out of reach to get our first win versus them, and I wouldn't be surprised, but it's definitely going to be a very tough matchup. To me, the person that stands out the most is June. I think he's definitely the best support player in NA, and he does a lot of things that most other supports don't do. The biggest thing I see from him is he sets up a lot of kills for his team, even though he's the support, especially on heroes like Deckard Kane. He has a lot of crazy combos and Lornado kills.
A lot of love from Swabs about June, and very justified at that.
June is... There's June, and then there's like everybody else. I'm sorry to everybody else out there, but June has kind of set the bar really high. He's done things that just other players aren't doing right now, and it comes with experience. Keep in mind, June entered this scene about 2 years ago this time, and he's been in that role ever since. Some of our other top supports, like Buds, Inclusion, they all came from different roles before they made that. And so June has a little bit more time, a little bit more experience under his belt, and it helps to be playing with other really good players when you've been at the top.
And having comms, too. That's also very important for June. He had a game where he didn't have it on, and it was a
But they were listening to his calls.
They were listening to his calls the whole time. Well, for the first time in about a year, Tempo Storm has changed up their Battleground ban versus Simplicity and took away Sky Temple. Do they go back to Battlefield of Eternity, or are they going to stick with banning Sky Temple, banning something else? It looks like it will be sticking to the Sky Temple ban. We're going to see a Tomb of the Spider Queen ban from LFM. LFM have banned that now twice versus other opponents, and being that Tempo has been willing to pick it, I expected that to stay consistent. And finally, we see LFM pick Battlefield of Eternity. If it's up, and Tempo used to not like it, maybe they can get a win there.
It was pretty much set in stone. Like, I keep track of all the bans, and they read from left to right, and it's literally just Battlefield, 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 like the entire way. And something switched with this team, and obviously LFM, they're known in their previous iteration to favor Sky Temple, but here we go. I mean, if it's available, let's see if something happens. I mean, Hanzo is definitely a high priority, but we see this team, when you got Fan on the other side, the Genji play, whether it's him or Ven, and then you've got also the other hero, Hanzo, Tracer, and Genji, all in that order. They all have high impact on this in very different ways.
The drafting flexibility has been really interesting to see for Tempo Storm. It's very clear that they're trying to have a solid three-man of Glaurung, June, and Caterpillar. Cattle has played 2 heroes. June has played 4, but 2 primarily. Glaurung has played 6, but only 2 of them more than 1 game. And then you look at Fan and Ven, and it's 8 or 9 heroes, depending on who you're talking about. So they're trying to have this core for them to then allow Fan and Ven to figure some things out, because we've seen things like Maev be played by Fan and also Ven, and Genji be switched around a little bit too. And while they're trying to figure out those things for the 2 teams, or for the 2 players, it's very cool to see that they keep this consistent core behind them.
Abbott, they're coming out, curious ban, but nothing unheard of. Hanzo is going to be available. Is Genji taken away? Hanzo's going to be taken away. Tracer and Malfurion. This is fast. Teams coming in with a clear strategy. Again, there's going to be some combination of having the Hanzo Tracer available. With Tempo Storm available, one of the better counters towards Tracer that we've seen, especially something that does well on this battleground, is a similar hero to Collusion, Karazim. Whether it's needed this early in the draft or not is another story. Generally, you can get that in a later part, and if not, there are definitely good backup options. But Tempo Storm and Karazim, he's definitely been known to play that hero and does do very well against Tracers.
LFM likely expecting that Hanzo first pick. That has been so normal to see. They are going to get Karazim here before, so it's not banned out. So they do have that counter versus Tracer, whether it's a chase down, a Divine Palm, for the Pulse Bomb, the Earth Ally and its benefits versus her auto attacks. They're also going to get Urel, who can provide some supporting to the team too. Can hold a point really well. We'll see if they can get any combos with a hammer into maybe an Immortal Stun, but that is a strong 3 heroes that we see so far from Tempo Storm.
It makes you a more unkillable composition when you don't have the liability of protecting the front line, and they can protect themselves, which is why Muradin comes to mind. When you mentioned the heroes that Cattle has played, it's not very far beyond Muradin and Johanna, so Muradin, I think, definitely is something to consider unless LFM wants to go that route, which is a hero that Fury has actually played 4 times himself. It's just a matter of, are you willing to let Johanna through? And it looks like Diablo is going to be the ban. So Muradin and Johanna have been let through, and we're going to see how those kind of come to form here as we get through.
Johanna is very nice to try to stall your opponents from being able to race down an Immortal, because the blinds, she can get in and kind of disrupt a little bit around 2, and blinds versus Tracer would be great. LFM, Fury hasn't really played too much Johanna despite loving the hero. In earlier stages on different teams, he's been a lot more aggression focused and trying to set up kills for his team. So I'm expecting that Muradin from LFM to continue.
It's Tempo here with the ban. They're going to ban out the Li Ming. Takes away some of that race. We'll see if LFM would be willing to commit to something like a Grey main at this point, because some of the other race heroes not exactly as well known here unless they're just looking to have the all-out team fight brawl. Unlikely we would see a Tassadar, but we have seen teams kind of do things a little bit differently as we see the Blaze pick up there for Swabs.
This is that Li Ming ban is so good versus LFM, because whereas I talked about the flexibility of the backline for Tempo Storm as they're sorting things out between Fen and Van, Figgy in his role swap has been so mage focused, and when I say mages, I mean mainly just Jaina, a little bit of Li Ming, and a little bit, I think 1 game of Gul'dan. And now we're gonna see some adjustment be made as they do pick up Greymane, who will add to the race.
It gives them a lot of kill potential. They can split off, so we've seen teams be able to at least zone out different areas from Hanzo, but Hanzo, it's hard to zone him out permanently. Speaking of zoning, Good luck diving that composition.
Ooh.
How do you dive that?
It's gonna be hard. I don't know if you do. Man.
Tempo's played Hammer one time. They did lose with it in that game, but this is a different story on a composition that is, I mean, sieging up with think about this. Sergeant Hammer and Hanzo have 2 spikes at level 7. Hanzo gets the cooldown on his scatter arrow, which is where his race really amps up, and Sergeant Hammer has the hover siege, which means that Hammer can casually move in and out of poke range. And then you're trying to get onto it through a Murden and Urel and a Karazim who's going to be thwarting a lot of your attacks. This is one tough puzzle to solve.
You talked about places to pick Hammer in a draft. This is such a good place for Tempo Storm. All LFM have to respond is with a warrior. They will do their best in getting a noob, but if they can't get in and get the kill that they want, that's going to be a scary dive in, because that's really in the faces of Tempo Storm to have that Anub'arak pick.
If you're going to Anub'arak, you're all in or you're all out, and that's the problem, is that once you commit with that burrow charge, you're not making it out of there. It's very rare that you see that style. And I think with the Anub'arak, it makes sense, but this is also a different, the last time we saw Anub'arak kind of suffered from the same issues that ETC does. Unless you're committing and you're all in, yes, you get a little bit of poke, yes, the spines, the impale can go down, and that's fine, but it's a matter of if you get poked down. This is a different Anub'arak that does have spell armor on his W now, but a higher health pool because he no longer has the base one. He still has a low health pool and still suffers against auto attack poke heroes. There are 2 auto attack poke and scatter arrow poke heroes on the other side. This is going to be a tough game.
I think so too, but if we know from LFM, they want to bring the aggression, and this will set them up so they can do that. Between that Tracer and the chain crowd control that the rest provide, as well as the gray main damage. We're kicking off on Battlefield of Eternity. Aware playing Malfurion. Fury will be playing that Anub'arak. Swabs in the solo lane playing Blaze. Droplets playing the Tracer, and finally Figgy will play gray main.
Swabs, the no fun police, not accidental hearthing with the rest of his team. Tempo Storm, they're going to be here on the right in red, as it will be Glaurung in that solo lane on that Urel, everybody's new favorite hero. Caterpillar, of course, is going to be on that Murden. Bringing the hammers, Sven, locked in here as Hanzo. Van, of course, will be on the Sergeant Hammer for the 2nd time this season. And June on support. He'll be on the Karazim as we get the race underway.
Using that gray main, LFM take to the top lane to start doing some structure damage. Urel's going to show up, Blaze watching to see when the rest come in so that the team can back off. Fear will be looking to disrupt anybody who tries to get aggressive on the rest of his team.
Was it Tempo that ran the sledgehammer?
No, I think that was Justin.
Justin, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Nice.
Furious had 2 very good impales to keep Urel at bay.
Well, someone I want to talk about before the action really starts to break out is Vin, of course. We've been watching him and his adjustment to this team for quite a while now, and last week is really where it felt like he started to gain a lot of confidence in what he can bring to this team. We saw him have a money Warden's Cage that ended up being the end of Simplicity when they were trying to push for core. He's going to back on out, but provide the damage here to give first blood. Also that Dragon's Arrow that we got to see when we were looking at the interview video before the match. He had that Dragon's Arrow that set up Fan's Dragon Blade exceptionally well, and then the Lornado of June.
Lornados are always good. Well, I said it at the outset, I'm going to say it again. If you go in as a Anub'arak, you sure as heck better hope you get those kills, because the chance that you make it out is not very high. Anub'arak got blasted when he went in there.
Well, he's back and he's going to do it again. He burrow charges in. They have the Impale. Pulse Bomb's there. And this time, they get the kill.
They got it. And they're not done yet. Droplets, he's putting the damage on. But that's it. It's either all in or all out. There's not a lot of in between.
Seems to suit LFM really well.
Oh, baby.
And they're all in again to give them the second kill. 2 kills from that as they can rotate down and start getting some camp pressure ahead of the first Immortal phase.
I'm digging it. I mean, what else are you going to do? Because it's not like you're going to be winning some over macro race, you're not going to be winning the race in terms of the objective. I mean, Greymaine's going to give you some, but I can dig this style if they can keep this up. I mean, it definitely, I think, is going to be their best shot. And coming out here, 2 kills right out of the gate, not too bad.
Yeah, you know, when I looked at their match versus Heroes Hype and then their match versus Endemic, it was a clear difference and maybe a little bit more panic. You saw a little more individual mistakes from LFM. And so I wasn't sure if that was, you know, the team wanting to do well versus Fury's old team, maybe feeling some pressure there, or the pressure at this being the more winnable match. But right here, what it's showing is there's going to be the pulse bomb. You don't quite get the kill there, though. Droplets. It's going to get chased down by Karzim. Fury, great job.
Body block.
Yeah, body blocking that skill shot. But it could also be that Endemic was surprising at how strong they were in the early game, because we were surprised at how strong they were. And I think Tempo Storm's a little more consistent with what you can expect there. And LFM are proving that as they've been able to get a couple kills here and are starting to put some damage in toward the Immortal.
Biggie eating a few hammers worth of damage. Was Justine before, but it's going to be Cattle this time going into Sledgehammer. Nice knockback there from the Immortal. You know he's the MVP.
I like that you complimented. Good job, Immortal. Way to get that.
You dwarf toss over this circle, you shall not pass. Wait, we also got the cleanse, by the way. After all the, from Urel, I should say, on Roots, after what we've seen, it's Burrow Charge Impale into Roots, and the follow-up has actually been really good. Urel with a little bit of help in a hand there.
Yeah, slows and root removal that we've seen a couple of times here in North America now. Tempo Storm really not that far behind. It's extremely close, this first early game. But Fan starting to siege up. Should force some sort of response. Droplet starts to leave. Swamp wants to get in here. Fury, too, as they're going for the pincer attack, and it works. Goodness, they blow up Hanzo.
That is one way to make sure and increase your chances of winning this race. Is now is a full-on race. Fury going in, 2-person stun. Urel trying to lend a hand here. The race is very much on, but it looks like it's in favor of Tempo.
No.
Or is it? No.
Oh.
LFM clutching it out with 155 health left.
That is not a lot.
Easy.
That is one
never
of the
in
closest.
doubt. Gilly, that was
Woo.
never, there was not a bead of sweat on the brow of LFM in that.
That was an awesome first phase. If the rest of the series goes like that, I think we're in for a treat, everybody. I know we were talking about the last series, but this is pretty fun. Stun over the wall, and Impale too. Fan decides that's not the place where he'd like to siege up. He will reposition as this Immortal goes to half health, stepping forward, getting the well here is a nice bit of a win for LFM.
Urel coming in with the flank. Fury's actually sniffing that out, which means that Blaze is getting that top lane soak, and Urel's going to be forced to go back up there. Of course, does get up there just fine. Not going to miss out on any there. You could see the clear indication that Tempo Storm not afraid to potentially look for an opportunity of their own, but LFM, see if they come in here as the storm goes in. Fan and team, they're sieged up, but are they willing to fight?
Is Fury willing to go in? So far has been taking some poke that puts him down.
Here comes Blaze. Blaze is coming in on the backside.
So is Urel right behind him. Fury takes a bunch of damage, has to leave, back off the point. Gonna Burrow Charge back in though. Cattle's the target, has the pulse bomb, lives just through it as Greymane goes down with Glaurung diving onto the point. Aware will follow.
And look who's on the front line. That is June on that Karazim, makes some killer plays. And just like that, 3 members on the side of LFM have gone down. And the flank, while it was there, still way too much. You got to imagine if Cattle falls to that pulse bomb, things look a lot different. But so far, able to survive and getting that armor off that dwarf toss, enough to keep him there.
That's what I was going to say. Twice now, we have seen that focus be on Cattle, and the armor that he gets from dwarf toss is enough to keep him alive. Before, it was okay for LFM, but this time, losing out how much they did is a camp and a quick Sergeant Hammer siege on the fort that gets so much done now and puts Tempo Storm in the lead.
Keeping this fort alive, Droplets. June going in again as he's going to get the takedown and then knockback by Fan. Not enough, as that's going to be the trade out there. Getting the fort here increases their race towards 10 so heavily, and it looks like Tempo Storm is committed. They get 10, which means that this Immortal phase it's about to kick off is definitely in favor of Tempo.
That was an excellent decision by Tempo. Yes, they sacrifice some experience at the top, but they get heroic abilities so far ahead that they can make sure that this Immortal phase looks completely different from the last one. June still keeping his heroic ability for the moment as he considers if he wants Divine Palm or 7-sided strike. And they will force to halfway point and get a camp to get the siege going.
I think he's waiting. I was actually thinking about this a moment ago. I mean, you need damage. You need to be able to survive on a point and do damage in an area. I kind of wonder if Locust Swarm might actually be playing here. There's going to be the Dragon Arrow, 3-man setup, not far enough away for a bigger stun, but they are sieging up nonetheless. In comes the damage, 7-sided strike for the defensive utility. Is going to be enough? It's going to be the first to fall.
Swabs catches him out of that with the jet propulsion. Now he's chasing down for more, has the slow on Vin, wants to get in here, and a burrow charge will enable him to do that now as 1, 2, 3 dive on top of Hanzo and take him down.
Cocoon is there on the Murd and see if they can follow up. There's going to be Avatar, it's going to be Poppy's going to dwarf toss out. Cattle going again, he does have Sledgehammer. I think actually did 800 damage with that hammer that just went out. So not the biggest race, but Swabs responding in kind. Droplets and team trying to get this down. Coming back in the race, and they are giving Tempo all that they can handle right now.
Yeah, they have. We see Nubra go back forward, and the Cursed Bullet follows up. Another kill, staggering the deaths with Ardent Defender. Tempo Storm still desperate to force back LFM before they can get the rest of this Immortal. What a phase!
I mean, LFM, they're going to go back and tap, and they're going to come back in, and they're going to be like, okay, I'm reloaded. Yeah, they're coming in firing right now.
It's so late, though. The Sergeant Hammer, the Immortal's there. Now they need to get kills. The Unstoppable stops. Dragon Arrow hits, and a Nubrak goes down.
Droplets just able to survive. Glaurung goes in, gets a little bit of damage in. They were reloaded. They just forgot to come in because Nubrak was already sitting about 40% health there. And now this is going to be another Immortal picked up here for Tempo Storm. 7 kills to 6 for LFM. They took down a large chunk of that health, which is the remaining part of that shield, but sieging up now is Sergeant Hammer with a Shaman Camp and an Immortal. This is terrifying.
Yeah, that's the product of getting that Shaman Camp, and then LFM having to focus so much on just catching up in the race after they won the fight initially. You know, later on, longer respawn timers change things if LFM can continually get these picks, but the Unstoppables from Fan have been so good every time now that Fury is wanted and hope to dive in on Sergeant Hammer. Now Fury gets thrown back. He's still in range of that Fan and barely lives with his Carapace.
Now, holding onto this keep would be very beneficial for them. They don't want to give up the type of control. They need every ounce of team fight potential, and a lot of, oh, that scatter arrow almost took down Fury. But if they go in and they lose that keep, and they lose the opportunity to potentially fight in key moments they're going to need, because they are going to need to fight, and they've done it. It's just that Immortal, that second one, Tempo Storm turned it around on them.
Yeah, and even before that, being able to siege up, get the fort, and just get heroic abilities fast enough that they got the initial lead, then the camp. Yes, LFM won a fight that put them back in, but they needed that Immortal because they needed to stop from the siege, from losing out on more and more structures, and to stay in leagues with the composition of Tempo Storm.
Return fight, Biggie is going to be alive. I believe Nature's Cure was used there outside of that stun, but another camp. More minions pushing forward. Glaurung goes in. Does get stunned momentarily. Root's going to go down on Sergeant Hammer. Bunker going to be used. Looks like they're going to have another defense here. 13 still not here for LFM, but Droplets continues to put pressure on. See if Tempo Storm is going to commit to this.
That's both of the camps in the top lane. Tempo Storm still hanging around. If nothing else, they disengage in a way so that they can get a lead on the Immortal before LFM can rotate in because they're so afraid to lose this keep. They are desperate to get this. Look at that 7-sided strike.
Here we go. Tranquility's out. Biggie going in, trying to do damage. Glaurung, Ardent Defender has been popped. Fan does live. Cattle Dwarf tosses out. He's scooting on out of there. He's going to be just fine. The pursuit of LFM going to be just short, but it is now race time again. LFM has a quicker path to the Immortal, but once Hanzo gets to the other side, look for that health bar to start chunking down.
LFM going to keep up with them as best they can up to the halfway point, and we can see where the next locations will be.
Actually,
that Shaman Camp is back up. Tempo quickly go to get that.
They hop over, and that's the difference between these teams. LFM, they were unwilling to commit to that, which means that they need to commit to the race here. Instead, they do neither, and that's the difference, that snap block judgment that Tempo Storm, they're known for. They take every ounce of a map and get as much out of it as they can. Droplets is putting damage on here, but Fan moving in up defense, still in that stealth mode.
Yep, he's starting to sneak his way up to the position to get the damage going around that rock.
You're going to have to fight. A hammer and a Hanzo is almost impossible. It's chunking. It is chunking more and more with every passing second. Here we go. Here's the engagement.
They're hoping to burn the unstoppable. They do get it out, but that is burrow charge used. Cursed Bullet does quite a lot to Fan to force him back even farther. But they're gonna get another. Yeah, they're gonna get another at it again. They need a kill. That's what this composition's designed to do. They get the cocoon diving in, trying to get the Sergeant Hammer. The Dragon's Arrow is gonna stall that out, and the 7-sided strike does quite a lot. The Tranquility in the bunker continuing to heal up LFM.
They're surviving for now. June does just barely escape. Fury, however, does not. Swabs goes in for the two-person stun, but it's not going to be enough as LFM is going to have to retreat again. And now Tempo Storm, they'll move forward and they'll help complete.
And that Shaman camp just now getting on the keep needs to be dealt with quickly if they're going to keep that alive. Meanwhile, the bottom lane is where the next siege will come in for Tempo Storm. Just barely.
I mean, that's
that
still pretty much.
It's pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, somebody will just walk over there. Glaurung will be able to just jump right on it, maybe push the minions in. It doesn't really matter. What the more important note is that once that top keep goes down, once Glaurung commits to that, the race for 16 very much here. Giant Killer chunking away at those health bars of Greymane, Anubarak, and Blaze will be even more impactful. And 16 could be enough for them to potentially push past an in-game.
Hammer slides forward. We're gonna see the engagement come in with Urel inside the cocoon. Roots there. 3-man Dragon Arrow. LFM just trying to get the fight, trying to get kills. They've let this Immortal to take out their keep, so if they can't find those kills, this is gonna be a lot of trouble to be in. Tempo Storm already gets the 1 kill, now 7-sided strike, all but gets the second on Swabs. The Storm Bolt, a knockback from Glaurung, but LFM's Fury goes in, gets a kill on Karazim before falling.
I mean, no support here is a big deal as this Immortal's still at about 50%, but you still have Hanzo, you still have Hammer. There's going to be the roots going down. The Aware able to survive for now. Swabs and team trying to hold on. Shields are down. It looks like Tempo Storm's going to try and end this game here, and it is falling rapidly with Sergeant Hammer on the back line, and that is enough for Tempo Storm. And that was a very Battlefield of Eternity, we wonder sometimes why we don't see it. The amount of chaos that entire game. There was no let up that entire game. That was non-stop. Like, it felt like a 15-minute game. That was almost like a 15-minute fight from the very beginning.
Yeah. It's not often that you see an Immortal phase be that close. What, 150 health? And to have 2 of them in one game? That's insane.
Well, LFM, they tried their chance. They ran into the Sergeant Hammer. You know they'll be preparing for that going forward, but it seemed like they had a decent response. But, you know, that self-cleanse of Sergeant Hammer is pretty strong, and I think it does make it hard to dive because it's on such a short cooldown over and over again. And so we'll see if there's adaptations in the draft. I mean, obviously there's a lot more battlegrounds that Hammer's good on compared to Battlefield of Eternity.
Right. We've seen her on quite a few, like Towers of Doom, Volskaya Foundry. The burrow charges, when they were focused on Sergeant Hammer, Fan could always spot it out and had that unstoppable ready and just would sit there and had the knockback. And then he's putting in that damage that Anubarak just could not deal with. When they could find a different target, like Hanzo, that was a different story. That looked really good when we saw LFM be able to get those picks. And this is something that LFM has been showing quite a lot that's worked out, is following Fury and Swabs in the lead and getting those blow-up kills before anyone can save them. So if they can keep that up, it's a problem of trying to transition that into a further lead past that early game with those picks.
Yeah, that's been my #1 thing. When I started watching them in scrims before we got into this, I'm like, man, this team, I mean, Figgy was trying to lead on the front line. He's still their primary shot caller, just not necessarily their target caller, I guess, in team fights. But it was always a matter of sometimes he'd overcommit just a little bit and his team would be just out of range. But that's the one thing is Fury brings a different confidence on that. He's very I'm pretty sure, vocal when he comes in on those calls. So there is a lot of follow-up, a lot of communication there to get those. So they're confident in their calls. And I think that's one of the things that can surprise teams when there's that level of aggression coming. They just need a lot more to surround that, and I think that's what they're working towards.
Well, a lot of what worked in that last game was the Dragon's Arrows to stop the aggression of LFM2 past level 10. And that, of course, is Vin trying to be there for his team. Fan, the duo of Fan and Vin, is pretty strong. But
Why can't it be Van, by the way?
yeah, oh. Either way, both of them are pretty good. And Vin, he's got big shoes to fill from Psalm.
Yeah, and they are very big shoes to fill because a lot of people would say Psalm was the #1 player in North America. But let's actually take a look through the first few weeks. This is the first few weeks of Phase 1 versus the first few weeks of Phase 2. And how is Vin holding up? Kills pretty much even. Assists a little bit down, but yes, cut down on that. The KDA definitely higher. Kill participation is there. You can see there's been a drop-off in kills per game, both within the league and Phase 1 and now, and for Tempo Storm. It's even, about 12 and 13% respectively. The key number is the damage per minute. That's total damage per minute, which is your hero damage and your, and your siege damage. And I want to note this because that is such a key number. Vin is always there for the kills. He's there, he's getting the kills, he's making sure he's active, but Psalm did more because he knew what this team expected. And that's the difference between experience. We saw Psalm. He would rotate to lanes. He knows when to be places. He knows when to do structure damage. He knows when he can be safe in lanes. And he did more. And that is something that Vin, as he gets more and more experience, I'm not saying he's Psalm, but I'm saying that he's filling the role that he's asked to fill. And as time goes on, this is an opportunity for Vin to say, hey, you know what? I can do more. I can be more places. I can be more effective instead of just team fights, because he's shown up in team fights in big ways. And so that total damage per minute, that is a key category I look at when we look at some of the stats deeper in, what teams are doing more per minute, what player is doing more per minute. You obviously got to look at the game time. But that's a big moment, I think, for Vin to say, hey, you know what? I am holding my own. I am doing what is asked of me. And over time, I think he's going to do a lot more.
There's another thing I'm looking at, which is average deaths per game, which is slightly lower for Vin. But again, when we looked at what roles were there for these players, Fan and Vin, or Van, are still figuring out what exactly, who's going to be doing what. Is it a matter of heroes? Is it a matter of what Fan and Psalm had, where Psalm was going to be on those hyper-aggressive, towed the line between melee and ranged assassin like Maiev, Genji, whereas Fan was just in the back, which gave Fan a very high KDA ratio. But now we're seeing Fan play sometimes the Maiev and them try to figure out who is going to be most impactful on which heroes. And so we may see that change, but it's really good to see that lower deaths for Vin, considering the fact that in general, Tempo Storm tends to have the lower end of those deaths.
I think a lot of that, as you mentioned, with that backline of him and Fan, the weight also, there's another number I have where Vin is doing about 34 to 35% of his entire team's kills. That's actually a really high number when you look at the ranged carries, and you expect that to be a little more around 29, 30% shared between those two backliners. I mean, that's generally across the board. If you look around the league, obviously these are much deeper stats, but it's around there. Crowan last year, or last phase, sat around 40%, which was the highest in the world. Those are anomalies. And so Vin right now, he is carrying a lot of that weight and committing a lot of kills and getting those takedowns for his team. So again, I think he's fitting in well. He's doing what is asked to be done. I'm just excited to see his future.
Well, his future will be on Dragonshire.